To our today's live family chat on Facebook with our Sparky family. My name's Ron Jackson, and as the Assistant Dean of Students, one of my main roles is off-campus student relations. So today's topic is how Sun Devils make a successful transition to off-campus living and doing well living in the community. So I've got Officer Despain and Officer Conway joining us today. Thank you guys for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, Ron.
Just a few questions for our Sparky family. So first up, can you both tell us a little bit about your roles as Tempe officers working in the community?
Sure. So I've been with the department for about 14 years. Worked in various areas in the department in the city. My current assignment, I work in our downtown area right near campus and work with our bike squad and our mounted unit.
Excellent, excellent. That's why you have the really nice water bottle.
Yes.
Okay.
Got to stay hydrated. It's about to get hot.
Officer Conway?
Yes, I've been with the police department for 11 years now. I'm currently assigned to the downtown district as well.
Okay.
I'm the downtown crime prevention officer that's assigned to the bike squad. So my roles work with the businesses, the apartment complexes down there, and also patrol the downtown district as well.
Okay. So there's probably some other things that you might want to add on. So tell us a little bit about how does your department typically interact with our ASU off-campus students?
Well, we interact with them just like we do any other member of the community. When you're a student here,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not just a student, but you're part of the community, often working in the community, living in the community, and so we interact with students all the time in various different settings.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anything different?
Yeah, some things we do is when school starts up, we'll do kind of bike prevention, theft prevention stuff that they can take around for that, what they can expect from our police department coming into the new city and transitioning into the outer communities and how we work with those outer communities.
Any connections on registration for bicycles, anything like that?
Yes, that's all part of the package. Once we go to those events and present ourselves, they can have a variety of different programs we offer them.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. So what does it mean for an ASU student to be respectful, responsible, a good neighbor in the community? And you know, I know it goes beyond just being someone that obeys the law. So how does that work for you all?
Yeah, it does go beyond just obeying the law. I mean, every citizen should be obeying the law, but for us, from our perspective as police officers in the community, we need the community's help.
Okay.
Oftentimes, they're the ones that know what's going on in their neighborhood. They're the ones who can help us out when it doesn't even have to be crime related, it can just be neighborhood issues, whether they're in residential neighborhood or apartment complexes. And you know, it could be something where they're calling the police and telling us what's going on, if it's something that needs to be dealt with right then, or just contacting those officers that are in and around their communities.
How would they make a connection with you to make a report or to alert you to something going on?
We have a lot of different ways they can do it, and it really depends on the circumstances, but we have different social media. We have a Twitter page and a Facebook page, and they can message on there if it's something that's not an emergency, but maybe something they just want to let us know if they've seen in their community or something they're concerned about. Always, good old-fashioned telephone, give us a call, and an officer will come out there with them too.
Anything that I want to make sure that I know both of you can kind of chime in, and so feel free to jump in anytime you have anything to, Ryan. So safety and security are always on the minds of especially our Sun Devil parents, but definitely our Sun Devil families. So when students move off campus, what are ways for them to assess what's going on in their community, be able to look up information on their own, and be able to understand, this is the dynamic of what happens in my neighborhood that I'm looking to move into?
Well, we have crime stats that we post online through various websites that you can find. And a big thing that they would want to look for in these communities that they're going to are the apartment complexes that join our crime-free multi-housing housing program.
Oh.
So we really work with these communities to try and make sure they're helping us enforce the crimes, and if there are people committing crimes on their property, we work with them to make sure they're not staying in that community.
Okay. So speak a little bit more about what crime-free multi-housing is for a property.
Yes, we partner with them. We'll educate them on some of the crime trends that are going around the city. We also work with them on creating an addendum per their lease. So if residents are living there and committing crimes, then that community will work to remove them from their apartment complex, condominium, or wherever it is. And then it's constant communication with the managers, letting them know what kinds of police calls we're getting there, what type of crimes are occurring, guide them through the police report access so that they know essentially what crimes, if any, are occurring on their communities, and we work with them on how to combat those.
So there's a partnership between
Absolutely.
the two and how they work with you all. That sounds excellent, especially as a parent of a young person that's in college. So what are some precautions that students can take for personal safety when they're traveling or they're just in their neighborhood? What can they do to make sure that they're personally safe?
The biggest thing I try to get across is just being aware of what's going on around you. Sometimes it's easy for us to get caught up in our own little world, going to and from.
Or we're
trying
like
to get
looking
to
at our
places.
phones.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly. Looking at the phone, having those earphones in, listening to music or lectures or whatever, and not seeing what's going on around you, hearing what's going on around you. So that's kind of the biggest thing that I try to get across.
So being aware,
yes,
is big.
yeah.
Then taking those small steps, making sure they're locking their doors, their cars, their apartments,
Right.
eliminating those crimes of opportunities and stuff like that.
Right.
Our high-tech society and this, even with the college campuses, a lot of students have laptops or other devices that are of high value out there. We want to make sure they're protecting them and locking them up, making it harder for people to get to.
Okay. Or at least hiding things so that people don't look in your window and see that there's something laying on the seat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are there things to look for in selecting a secure residence, like maybe a gated community or door lock, some sort of door lock or safety mechanisms? What should our families and students be looking for?
Sure. A lot of the newer communities that have been built around Tempe have been designed with a lot of more of the state-of-the-art security features.
Okay.
You have your card restricted access to your front doors, to the elevators, things of that nature.
Okay.
A lot of these properties have their own security companies there to help create extra eyes to prevent trespassers from coming in there, things of that nature.
Okay. Okay.
And the only thing I'd add to that is you can have all the state-of-the-art locks and key cards, but if you're not using it the way it's supposed to be used, it's not going to help. So that's something we'll see from time to time where, you know, maybe people get, for whatever reason, they'll leave doors propped open, or like we already spoke about, not locking things or not putting valuables out of sight, and just trying to eliminate those crimes opportunities. So.
Okay. So highly encourage locking the doors again and putting things away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Getting toward the end of this, one other question. So you all work for Tempe PD. So how do you all work with our ASU Police Department?
We've got a great working relationship with the ASU Police Department. We have for years. It's sharing information. It's working together. We have, I know in both our careers, we've had officers that have come and worked on squads with us in Tempe.
Excellent.
There's a lot of, events, school events where we work together side by side, and that's from the top down, from our chief's office, working with their chief's office, all the way down to the, officers who work in the street. We've had a great relationship with them.
I know we've worked together once before,
Yes.
and we were working, I think it was just something as simple as like traffic patterns when we're doing move-ins and move-outs and
Yes.
directing traffic, and making sure that we're coordinated with on-campus move-in, and we've got some properties that are really close to campus, making sure that, you know, they don't direct their traffic into our traffic. So, you know, we've had some good experiences with that too. So I know if you wanted to add anything to that, but
No, that was pretty much it. The communication's the big thing. Things going
Sure.
on campus, and then things going on in the city, making sure nothing messes with each other.
Yeah.
Everybody gets along.
absolutely. Thank you guys so much for being on with us. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And knowing that you did so well, we'll probably invite you back. So be aware and know that we may get another invite back.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So coming up next, we have our wellness ambassador, Michael Navarro. So welcome. Thanks for being with us. Students' perspective on this is great. So we're just glad to have you to come and participate with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, what year, what's your major here at ASU. Why did you even choose ASU?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually from Gilbert, Arizona, so only about 20 minutes away from here. Went to Gilbert High School, did the whole local thing. I never moved too far. I've always been in Arizona.
Okay.
My major is business entrepreneurship, and then I have a minor in nutrition, or working towards that. And then why I chose ASU, my family is really important to me, and so I just like to stay, real close to them. And it's been really nice to have them here.
Cool. So you said nutrition is big for you. What do you plan to do after you graduate with your degree?
So I'm still figuring out what platform I want to go about spreading the message of proper nutrition and things like that. But ultimately, my goal is to eliminate misinformation about nutrition and exercise, things like that. Because the internet is a great, wonderful tool. However, at the same time, there's just so many people that think they are qualified to speak on things like nutrition and exercise, and so they kind of lead people astray on the proper way of doing things, and kind of giving people like a magic solution to losing weight or things like that. So that just kind of makes me crazy a little bit.
Okay. So yeah, the internet does give us a lot of information. So if we don't know how to synthesize that or make sure it's a credible source, it does make it a little difficult. Tell us a little bit more about your role. It sounds like you're, as a wellness ambassador, you get to connect that with the nutrition piece. So tell us about what your role is and how that connects.
Absolutely. So I work at the Sun Devil Fitness Complex. I've been there since the spring of 2015, so a little bit over 2 years now. And my official position is wellness coordinator. So I essentially lead the entire wellness team at the Tempe campus. And what we do is design and implement wellness-related programming. So that's like events, just passive little things that are like flyers and just little like health education things for everybody. Okay. So my role is more so like in managing people, but at the same time, the way I got into it was by creating wellness programs and things like that. So the very first thing that I did was created a lecture series that was dedicated to educating students on how to safely and effectively build lean muscle mass by bringing in credible experts from the field of exercise science.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's been a really great way to get education in front of the students in a engaging way.
Excellent. Well, I'm so glad that you talked about pulling in sources that were credible and getting those experts in front of our student population. So thank you for doing that. So from a wellness standpoint, ASU students benefit greatly from living on campus. We got a lot of resources for them on campus, but when they begin to transition to off campus, what are you seeing that happens, or what do you see that they need in order to keep a better diet and be well when they live off campus?
So a couple things that I notice is I'm actually really surprised at the amount of students who don't know how to cook. or do like really anything in the kitchen besides use their microwave and maybe boil water. So I think the biggest thing for students going off campus is just learning how to cook and kind of getting out of that comfort zone of just using the microwave. And really that really just comes with practice. The first time I did that, I started cooking was my mom, and she showed me how to make chicken. And, obviously it was really bad and I burnt it, but I've gotten a lot better. It's just taking time and practice and just branching out and trying different things when it comes to cooking. So,
Did you try any of the videos that are online?
I was actually going to comment on that next. So when I first started cooking, I kind of just experimented myself, kind of let myself get my feet wet. But then when I started branching out, and I started looking at recipes. And
yeah.
I noticed at one point I was like chopping and prepping ingredients really slowly, like onions. So I looked up in YouTube how to chop an onion.
Brian?
Yeah. And so I watched like a Gordon Ramsay video, and it just made like prepping food just so much
you went
faster.
all the way to the top.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's I mean, to me there's no shame in like watching simple videos like that on how to cook. Because cooking is just such an essential skill if you want to live a healthy and balanced lifestyle. And it's a fantastic de-stressor for, after class, just plug in your headphones, listen to some music, and cook some food.
Yeah. Do you encourage the students to actually come back on campus and use the facilities at the Sun Devil Fitness Center? Does that play into your role at all?
Absolutely. So I would encourage all students to get involved with Sun Devil Fitness Complex just in some way. Shameless plug. But I mean, that's simply because we have something for everybody.
Okay.
We've got excellent fitness centers, like the actual weight rooms. We've got intramural sports for all different kinds of sports. Sports clubs, so if you want to get a little more competitive and travel, you can do that. We've got
travel sports.
Yeah, so
Okay.
like lacrosse and I believe our baseball team is a club sport. I could be wrong, but bigger sports like that we have as club sports, and they go
Okay.
around and travel. And then we got group wellness. So if you like kind of like more Pilates style classes or just like a group setting, you can do that. There's so much we have to offer, and especially with our wellness program. We really try to focus on all aspects of wellness rather than just nutrition and exercise, although those are my two favorite things. Those aren't necessarily some of the
Right.
favorite things of the other students. And so we do things like cooking demos. Just yesterday we had therapy dogs were there. And so people were just hanging out with the dogs, just kind of de-stressing and relaxing from school and everything, just hanging out, petting the dog. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we do.
So beyond just the physical, there's the emotional, there's
Yes.
the mental.
Absolutely.
That you all support. That's excellent to hear and much needed. Anything about getting sleep, making sure that they're maintaining a pretty good schedule? Do you all talk about any of that?
So we haven't put much emphasis as of now on things like time management and sleep. I know one of our Well Love ambassadors, she works in the residence halls at Manzanita, and she's doing a sleep program for her staff or for her residents. But about just like importance of sleep and things like that. So messages like that are getting spread, but just given the environment that we're in college campus, where a lot of students are stressed, a lot of our focus is on things like nutrition, physical activity, and then mental health, especially, and
definitely
sexual health and stuff like that. But we're coming up with our calendar for the next coming semester, or for the next fiscal year, and I've been putting a lot more sleep related things in there, because for me sleep is insanely important. I need from like my 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Get your 7 to 8 hours of sleep, regardless if you need to study or not. It's just insanely important. You don't understand how important it is until you don't get sleep. So
all right. Well, Michael, thanks for being on with us.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you
Thanks for
sharing
having
this
me.
information with our Sparky family. So we have some other folks coming up right behind you. Thank you. So talking about off-campus student relations and our community ambassador, we've got Kyle Frey. and Summer Travis as one of our student ambassadors. So thank you guys for being on with
Glad
us.
to be here.
So can you all tell our parents and families a little bit about, what your role is? Why don't we start off with you, Kyle?
Sure.
And then Summer, why don't we have you talk about your role as a community ambassador?
Sure. Well, I'm the coordinator for off-campus student relations, and in my role, I do a few different things. I work with the university and the city, as well as the police on campus and off campus a little bit. I also work with our student staff. We have some partners that we have students out at different apartment complexes around ASU. We're currently in 8, hoping to move to 11 next year. And we basically bring ASU resources to those students. When students are living here on campus, they get a lot of access, and we want to make sure that students who live off campus still feel like they have that access as well. And that's where our community ambassadors play such a big role, is they're student leaders here on campus that bring those materials, bring those resources, and the access of ASU out to them where they live.
Well, he just opened it right up for you, Summer. So
Yeah, so our role is basically when you go from living on campus where you have a lot of amenities that you don't even necessarily realize, making that transition to off campus, it can be scary and you can feel a little cut off from campus. So our job as ambassadors is to be an ambassador between campus and off campus. So if there's events going on, or if they have a question about ASU and they don't really know where to go with it, they just they need a job, whatever they need, we're basically there for their comfort and to help get them connected back to campus when they start to feel a little disconnected.
So I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Talking about resources that are directly provided, and maybe some of the programming that's done through the community ambassadors and how you all connect. Speak a little bit about that.
Sure. Any number of resources that campus has, whether it's student advocacy through the Dean of Students office, helping students with any kind of issues that come up above and beyond their extracurriculars, whether it's counseling services for any of our students that need that extra person to talk to if they're having any kind of stressors throughout their school year, whether it's health services, wellness services, as we heard from Michael. So any of those things, we will bring that access to the students. If they have questions about it, where to go, who to see, that's where our community ambassadors come in, making that bridge and closing that gap, so students know that if they're having any kind of difficulty in their experience off campus, that they have some kind of connection to ASU to help them out when they're struggling.
So Summer, you're right there in one of the apartment communities with a good number of folks that are ASU students. What are you seeing as far as their needs and things you can help them with, or even programming that you do?
So I think the biggest question I get from students who are off campus is just general questions about ASU, like how do I join a club? And just like questions about their classes, questions about, certain parts of ASU that they don't necessarily know about. My friend got a ticket riding on his bike for $200 because he was riding on the wrong side of the road.
Wow.
Things like that, so they may not necessarily realize making that hard transition to living completely on their own. We want to be there for them for like anything they need, really. If we can't handle it, if we can't give them a direct answer, we can direct them to someone who can.
Okay. So you're like an on-site connector
Yes.
to anything that is ASU, and you. What I'm hearing, you're saying you're making sure students know everything at ASU is still available to them.
Yes. Yes.
Very,
Absolutely.
very, very cool. Do you all have any general advice for students and their families in making decisions about transitioning to living off campus for the first time?
Sure. I would definitely, look at all your options. Look at places. Do you want an apartment style living arrangement? Do you want to look into a house? How far is that from campus? And look at what is your financial situation. Look at what kind of things you can afford. Taking into consideration what are your monthly bills going to be like now that you've got to handle that.
So I got to do a budget.
You got to do a budget. Exactly.
What are some of the challenges that students encounter that they might not expect when they move off campus?
I'll answer that. So I think probably the biggest thing that people don't realize when they get their apartment, especially moving from a dorm and maybe the parents are paying for the dorm or
Right.
something, is just how many expenses there are. Really, I mean, there's
Like
you have
what?
You go to the apartment and they tell you this is how much to rent the apartment. You think, great, that's not terrible. I can get a job. I can make that amount. But what you don't know about is there's extra cost. There's renter's insurance. There's water, electricity. There's
Application
laundry.
fee.
There is a lot of things, and food especially,
Okay, yeah.
that you just don't think about. You go in, you get the apartment. It's great. You're moving your furniture in. Life is great. You're a big kid now, and you just are just hit with these bills.
Yeah.
You had no idea.
It's
And
adulting.
suddenly that rent goes from here to here.
You're right.
And so what I really recommend people do is to really get an exact estimate of not only the rent, but also other costs, water, laundry, electricity, and insurance. Also starting to think about transportation to campus.
And cost that in as well,
Yes.
right?
Parking costs.
Parking costs. I mean, if you're going to get a car, and if you're thinking I'm going to bike 20 miles to campus every day, that's probably not the best idea. I mean, if
Okay.
you want to,
More power to you.
go ahead, but
Right.
you gotta start thinking rationally and really. It's a difficult transition into suddenly being in the adult world.
Mhm.
So I'd say to make it the easiest, just go over all the costs and really understand what you're about to do, and then it'll go smoothly.
Wow, super helpful, super helpful. I was thinking budget, but it's like you think you know everything when you're moving, and then you get other costs that you just don't anticipate because you've never really had to do it before.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, okay, thank you. So, last question: why is it important for ASU students to remember that they represent the university when they live off campus?
I think one of the important things for students to realize, whether they live on campus, off campus, or they're studying abroad, is they're an ASU student wherever they go. And ASU expects that students are going to follow the code of conduct that all students are supposed to follow. There's a number of rules. The very first one, don't cheat. It's school. You shouldn't be cheating in classes.
Right.
But there's things on there that include not breaking laws and ordinances of the city. In the event that you're off campus and you want to have a lot of friends over and it gets a little loud, someone might call to respond to it. And if the police respond to the noise, you may get a citation for that noise. We want to make sure that our students are being good members of the community and getting to know their neighbors around them. So we want to make sure that students understand that wherever they are, they should hold themselves accountable to a certain sense of behavior and decorum, I guess.
So I know we've actually talked to some parents out and students in the community, and they were surprised to know that the student code of conduct applies on campus as well as off campus.
Exactly.
And I think I remember hearing you say that that their first name is actually ASU student. It's like, no, my name's not ASU. Yes. When the newspaper prints something about you in the paper,
Exactly.
it usually says ASU student and then your name.
Exactly.
So we have to always make sure that we put that out there that you're an ASU student first,
Yep.
and then it's who you are.
Exactly. Who we are as students is definitely a big part of the value of the diploma we get when we graduate.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Sure thing.
Appreciate you being on and giving
Always a pleasure.
excellent information for our Sparky family. So thank you so much. Last but not least, but next up is our student media. So Dee Dee Grogan, thank you for being on with us.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you, as always. So, tell us, how long have you been working at ASU, and tell us a little bit about your role here.
I actually started working at ASU in the fall of 1994 as an SOS person. Not a lot of people know this, but ASU actually had their own internal temp agency, and that was sort of how you got started.
SOS.
That's what they called it. And
What
so,
did that stand for?
you know, I can't even remember what it stands for at this point. But I actually started first working at Residential Life. From there, I went to ASU Resource, evaluation office. It doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
Then I actually worked at ASU Family Resources for many years and sort of transitioned into ASU off-campus housing and ASU student media.
Okay. So
Been here a long time.
a good swath of things. So you know a lot about the university.
I've seen a lot of changes
seen
over
a
the
lot.
years. Yes.
So I already know that you wear a lot of different hats and carry a lot of different roles with student media. One of them is organizing our student media off-campus housing guide. So what is that about? Tell us a little bit about that, and then I want to ask you about the housing fair that connects with that off-campus housing guide.
Well, the housing guide is actually a resource that's available for all students, the ASU community in general. And what it does is it provides you information about various places that you can live off campus. That also includes specific information such as maybe a range, different things that they offer, how many crime calls have been completed.
Oh, calls for service to the
Absolutely,
police? Okay.
yes. But inside of that, there's also some other kinds of resources and written pieces, anywhere from here are tips about living off campus to, hey, here are resources you're going to find on campus.
Perfect.
Hey, here, when you were talking about wellness, there was actually a year in which there were a lot of recipes that were actually included in
We
the
actually
housing
had
guide.
recipes
Yes, we
in
did.
the housing guide.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So it varies every year, and it's sort of based off of what we're seeing as a need for the students, what we're hearing the students saying. I'm
Okay.
not finding this, or I need this, or I've forgotten this, and we want to make sure that those pieces are addressed in the housing guide.
Perfect. So that housing guide kind of goes with the ebbs and flows of what students are speaking about, what they're needing, and then you include that in there. So tell us a little bit about the housing fair. That was just, I don't know, how long ago? Maybe a week or so ago?
Yes, the housing fair actually took place last Wednesday and last Thursday, March 22nd and 23rd. We do a housing fair every semester. We usually do one in the fall, which is in November, and then we do a second one in the spring, which is usually generally in March.
Okay.
And I like to call it a one-stop shop. Because basically what you're going to find is you're going to find representatives from our community, residential places. You will also find on-campus representatives for on-campus housing. You will find departments and organizations and student groups, and you will find our ASU PD, our Tempe PD, our crime prevention units here.
So it is a nice cross connection of everybody at this thing.
Yes, so we usually like to have our wellness folks there, our counselors there, basically any type of resource that a student may need. If we don't have one of those resources available for a student right then and there, they can always contact me or just stop and provide some information, and then we will get that information for them and send it to them.
Okay. So if I happen to have missed that housing fair and I'm looking for information, where can I find it?
Usually I generally like to have students actually email me. The reason why is that way I can make sure that everybody is being addressed, that folks are being taken care of. But the other thing is that way I can also customize the information that I'm sending to the students, because not every student needs the exact same information. Some may need a little bit more, and so I sort of like to make sure that I'm meeting their specific needs by answering and replying.
Okay.
There's a lot of resources that are actually available online.
Okay, so they can do some of their own search?
Absolutely. I encourage research.
Okay.
Research is very good. If you're coming to a university, you're going to have to do research anyways. Why not start by researching where we're
Absolutely.
going to live, what's going to work best for you?
Okay. And I think looking at the website, the housing guide is actually on the website as well. So
Yes.
even if they can't get a tangible copy of it, they can actually pull it up online.
Yes, they could. And even if they were having issues with something like that, I could email them the information as well too.
Okay.
We can also mail stuff. We prefer to be sustainable and email you the information.
Right. Okay.
And there's a lot of information out there, and that can sometimes be very overwhelming. I always say just take each tab, each paragraph one at a time, simply so you can get through it and you don't feel too nervous, because it is scary moving off campus or moving on your own for the first time.
It is, and then as our student just shared a minute ago, there's a lot that they don't know
Yes.
Especially in the financial realm. Are there certain things that students would have to think about? Let's say they're moving off for the first time, they're about to sign a lease or something. Any words of wisdom that you have from your office in creating the off-campus housing guide?
Well, there's quite a few steps that can be done. One of the things that I really like to stress to students, and that's to anybody, is if you do not understand all of the pieces of a contract, including the little tiny itty-bitty pieces at the bottom, don't sign it. You should not sign anything until you 100% understand that information. If you need to.
But my leasing agent is saying,
And
I'm
you know
going to miss
what?
this deal
And-
if I don't get it signed within the day.
And I say take that extra time. Again, you want to make sure that you're understanding everything that you've signed.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of students don't necessarily understand, especially, if you're never lived on your own, or maybe you're coming from another country, that when you're signing this contract, it's a legal binding contract.
Okay.
There's really not a way to get out of that. And I have known some students who didn't quite understand that, and by the time they've contacted me, they have signed 6 leases.
Oh, wow.
And then we have to figure out how can we help you to get out of all of this, and here's some things. So
legally, they were on
they were
for 6 different contracts and would have had to
pay
pay all 6.
Yes.
For
Yes.
that would go at least 10 to 12 months.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And that's scary, and that's one of the reasons why I really encourage people to reach out to me, is I want them to understand this. I want them to be educated before they go out and actually sign something. We want to make sure that you're finding something that is going to meet your individual need. You know, to ask me or another staff member, hey, where should I live? One of the things I will say is I wouldn't even tell my own son where to live. What he would need and what I would need are vastly different. So I do have, there are a couple of tips that might make things a little bit more helpful.
Perfect. Give us your top 5.
Okay, so for example, one of the first things I would do is I would go to the ASU off-campus housing website. And the reason why I would go there is there's actually a tab for every little thing, and one of the tabs that I really like talks about first steps. And it talks about all the little things you're going to need in those first steps, and then it'll walk you through to that second step and onward, just giving you some guidance. And again, I would go through every single one of those tabs, including the one on safety.
You seem so adamant about this.
I am very adamant about this. I find a lot of students and even parents where I get surprised that they'll tell me we're perfectly safe. And I love that we are all feeling confident about that. However, that's not necessarily the case, and I really want students to be very well aware, very educated on all the various pieces that are available to them out there, including those safety tips. There are safety things that you can do. If you went to the Sun Devil Fitness Center, which every student has a
card to be able to get
card
in.
to go to,
Absolutely.
they have tasks. They have self-defense classes over there, and I suggest everybody, first time you move off campus, take one of those classes. They're just a nice refresher course.
Okay.
I think I take one every couple of years, and I get surprised. Each and every time I go, I learn
learn something
one new
different?
something that's like, oh,
Sure.
I never even, common sense. That's perfect common sense, but I didn't think about that.
Sure.
Secondly, I would encourage anyone to look at a cost sheet, a budget.
Okay, definitely. We were talking about that.
As Summer was saying, there are a lot of things that are involved with moving off campus that students don't think about. Hey, do you need to pay for laundry? Do you have laundry in your own facility? I mean, do you have to pay for that extra parking? Is there a light rail pass that's included in your
Yeah, what's
renter
actually included
package.
in your rent? Yeah.
Exactly. Ask those kinds of questions. Get that information. Create a budget sheet. If you don't have one, again, you can contact me and I'll send you a little list of here are things that you might want to think about. Here are things you need to address.
If I pull one offline, would that be a good resource, or should I actually email you?
I would suggest emailing me because we actually found one that actually worked a little bit better. That was geared more towards a student versus someone who was moving into a
In
home
general?
for the first time.
Okay, that's good
Because
to
a
know.
lot of them tend to be that I'm moving into a home for the first time and I've got my whole family, and that's not necessarily going to be what every student's going to need.
Okay, perfect.
One of the other things that I find is very helpful for students is coming up with 4 or 5 things you need to have no matter where you live. It's a deal breaker if we don't have that.
Okay.
You know, for example, I'm one of those people. I have to have washer and dryer in my unit. I don't want to have to go down somewhere else or have a communal one. That's one of those deal breakers for me. So
Okay.
I find that if you've got 4 or 5 specific, like I can't live without these specific things, it also helps narrow down
Or
the
if
amount of
I definitely
searches.
want to bring my cat.
Yes.
You know, 'cause I can't live without my cat.
Maybe
so
I have 4 cats, and I need to know.
find an apartment community that allows for cats. Okay.
Exactly. So those are little things, and from there, once you've got your 4 or 5, gotta have these.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I would start with a small list of 4 or 5 places that meet those needs.
That meet those main needs.
And
Okay.
start with that. Start with visiting or calling. Or, one of the other things is I highly suggest becoming one of our ASU off-campus students' Facebook page.
Okay.
members.
Liking it.
That way you can actually reach out to other students. Hey, I'm thinking about living here. I'm trying to find other students who've lived there, and what has been your experience, Or even going directly to the place. Now, of course, it's not conducive to people who are out of state or maybe from a different country.
Right.
In which case, that's where the Facebook page would be nice. Because otherwise, I highly suggest going to a property, sitting down, talking to people as they're coming in and out. What's your experience? Do you like living here?
Mhm.
What has been good? What has been bad? Get well-rounded. The last thing I would do is, of course, my safety checks. There are students who, hey, maybe I want to rent a room in a house
Mhm.
with some other students, or maybe there's somebody in this neighborhood who has something available for rent, and I need to meet with this person. I highly suggest putting in a safety device. And one of the things that I suggest to a lot of people, and this is whether you're renting it or you are going to be the renter, is the first time you meet, it needs to be a public, open place.
Yeah.
Lots of people around. When you get to a point where, hey, I want to go and I want to check this place out, one of the things I suggest is have a friend that's going to be on the other side of the phone for you.
Right.
And every 5 minutes you have to call with a code word to your friend. If you don't call within that 5 minutes, that friend is going to call you and they will know exactly where you're at. And I would do that
Okay.
whether you're the renter or the rentee. And that's simply because it's safety for everybody.
Yeah. Do you ever maybe connected but may not be connected to this specifically? Do you recommend folks use the LiveSafe app that ASU offers?
Personally, I don't recommend anything. I may suggest
Okay.
certain things, but not necessarily specifically that.
Okay.
I do know that we do sometimes have students who need a little more hand-holding, and we do actually have a realtor that is on call that will help faculty, staff, students out. There's no charge to faculty, staff, or students. They're just there to simply ensure that maybe there's a little more hand-holding that needs to be done, or maybe I've got those 4 cats and I need to find a place to live, and I need a little more assistance.
Okay.
One of the things I will mention, and this is just simply in case someone doesn't realize this, is there aren't always a lot of students who know how to cook. Maybe the first time you're
Right.
grocery shopping, funds tend to be a little bit tight. One thing that I want students to remember is that even if you're living off campus, you can purchase a meal plan so that you can actually eat on
Yeah.
campus. And a lot of students forget that. So maybe that's first
Or
semester.
just purchase a smaller plan as
Exactly.
opposed to a full plan.
Yeah, I need a little bit of help, but I'm
Yeah.
willing to do this. It's still available. And there's a lot of resources that are actually available to students who
Yeah.
are living off campus.
That's a great point. I think that gets overlooked quite a bit. If you've got classes in the morning and then something a little later in the afternoon and you're on campus, but you can actually buy a meal plan or a smaller meal plan
Yes.
and be able to eat while you're here. Diddy, good to speak with you.
Thank
you
you
so
for
much
having me.
for speaking with our Sparky family and our students that are listening in. So hopefully this has been helpful for all of our folks out there on Facebook. And please contact our office if you have any additional questions, either of the panel or of the Dean of Students.